Exiled humans left in silence, but their return will echo forever. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched as far as the eye could see. Massive beings from across the galaxy sat in judgment, their alien forms casting strange shadows under the cold blue light. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Maria Santos, representing all of humanity before these ancient powers. Her hands trembled slightly as she looked up at the council members. The Zephyrians glowed like living crystals, their voices ringing like beautiful music even when they spoke of terrible things. The Korthak buzzed and clicked as one mind, thousands of insect-like creatures thinking as a single being. Above them all floated the ethereals, so old that some said they had watched stars being born. Humanity stands accused, announced the lead ethereal, its voice echoing in everyone's mind rather than their ears. You have expanded too quickly. You have built weapons without permission. You have refused to follow the laws that keep peace in our galaxy. Maria stepped forward. We only wanted to grow and learn. We never meant to threaten anyone. Intention does not matter, buzzed the Korthak collective. Your species is dangerous. You reproduce too fast. You ask too many questions. You do not respect the order we have built over millions of years. The trial continued for days, but Maria could see it was hopeless. The council had already decided. They spoke of human colonies that had expanded beyond approved zones. They showed videos of human scientists experimenting with technologies the council had banned. They presented evidence of human ships carrying weapons that broke galactic treaties. We have maintained peace for 10 million years, sang the Zephyrian choir. Humanity threatens that peace. Therefore, humanity must be removed. The sentence came down like a hammer blow. Complete exile. Every human colony outside the Sol system had 30 days to pack up and leave. Any human ship found beyond the solar system after that deadline would be destroyed without warning. Maria fought back tears as she sent the message home. Across the galaxy, on 100 different worlds, humans received the news. Families who had spent generations building new homes would have to abandon everything. Scientists working on important discoveries had to destroy their research. Children who had never seen Earth were being forced to go to a world they didn't know. The evacuation began immediately. Massive ships that had once carried cargo now filled with people and whatever possessions they could carry. The journey back to Earth took months for some colonies. Every day, council ships watched them, making sure no one tried to hide or delay. Captain John Miller commanded one of the evacuation fleets. He had served in space for 20 years and had never felt so helpless. Keep the ships together, he told his crew as they watched the colony of New Texas disappear behind them. Don't give them any excuse to fire. The hardest part was leaving the graves behind. Humans had died on those worlds, had been buried in alien soil that they had learned to call home. Now those graves would sit empty and forgotten, tended by no one. As the last human ships crossed into Sol system, something amazing happened behind them. The greatest engineering project in galactic history began. Ships from dozens of council species arrived at the edge of human space. They brought machines that could bend reality itself. The barrier they built was invisible but absolute. It used quantum energy to jam every form of communication humans had ever invented. Radio waves died at the barrier's edge. Faster than light, messages simply vanished. Even light itself was changed, making it impossible for anyone outside to see what happened within Sol system. Dr. Elizabeth Chen watched from the observation deck of the space station orbiting Jupiter as the barrier snapped into place. One moment she could see the stars clearly. The next it was as if a glass wall had been built around their entire solar system. We're cut off, whispered her assistant. Completely cut off. The council made sure the galaxy forgot about humanity quickly. Human names were removed from star charts. Trade routes that had included human colonies were redrawn. In schools across the galaxy, alien children learned about the dangerous species that had once threatened galactic peace and had been properly dealt with. But inside the barrier, something unexpected began to happen. Instead of despair, humans felt something else entirely. They felt angry. They felt determined. Most importantly, they felt united in a way they had never been before. President David Park addressed the combined population of humanity from Earth's capital. They wanted to silence us, he said. His words broadcast to every human settlement in the solar system. They wanted us to disappear. Instead, we're going to become something they never imagined. The change started immediately. Without alien technology to rely on, humans had to innovate. Scientists who had studied alien devices now worked to build better human ones. Engineers who had copied council designs now created completely new solutions. Dr. Sarah Williams led a team working on new propulsion systems. "We don't need their jump gates," she told her team. "We'll find our own way to fold space." Meanwhile, Commander Zhang Wei gathered the best military minds humanity had. "They think they know how we fight," he said. "When we return, we'll show them something completely new." The isolation that was meant to weaken humanity instead made them stronger. Earth's factories worked around the clock. Mars became a giant research facility. The asteroid belt was mined more efficiently than ever before. Every human settlement became part of a vast network sharing knowledge and resources. Children born after the exile grew up hearing stories about the galaxy beyond their solar system. They learned about the aliens who had cast them out. They studied everything humans knew about council technology and tactics. Most importantly, they dreamed of the day they would see those aliens again. Years passed inside the bubble of silence. The council rarely thought about humanity anymore. Their galaxy was peaceful and ordered just as they liked it. Trade flowed smoothly between approved species. Conflicts were resolved through proper diplomatic channels. The dangerous humans were gone and forgotten, but they were not gone. Behind their quantum barrier, humanity was changing. They were learning. They were growing. Most importantly, they were planning. The silence that was meant to contain them was becoming their greatest weapon. In the dark between the stars, human ships would soon move unseen and unheard. The galaxy would learn that some silences, when finally broken, create the loudest echoes of all. Deep in the research labs of Europa, scientists worked on technologies that would have amazed even the ancient ethereals. They were building tools that could make ships invisible, weapons that could disable entire fleets, and communication systems that could pierce any barrier. "They wanted us to disappear," Dr. Chen said to her team as they watched their latest experiment succeed. "Instead, we're going to become something they'll never see coming." The exile was complete, but it was not the end. It was the beginning of something the galaxy would remember forever. Exiled humans left in silence, but their return will echo. Forever 50 years had passed since the exile began. In galactic terms, this was barely a moment. The ancient ethereals had lived for millions of years. The Zephyrian crystals grew for thousands of years before they even began to think. The Korthak hives planned their actions across centuries. To them, 50 years was like a brief nap. They had already forgotten about humanity in any meaningful way. When council members spoke of the exile at all, it was as a success story. A dangerous species had been contained, and the galaxy was better for it. High ethereal Zothkul floated in the grand chamber where galactic policies were decided. Around it, representatives from dozens of species discussed trade agreements and territorial disputes. Everything was orderly. Everything was peaceful. Everything was exactly as the council had planned. "The barrier around Sol system continues to function perfectly," reported a Zephyrian technician, her crystal body chiming softly. "No signals have been detected from within. No ships have attempted to cross the boundary. The containment is complete." Zothkul felt satisfaction wash through its ancient mind. "The humans have likely destroyed themselves by now," it thought to the other council members. Their violent nature would have turned inward without external targets. The silence from their system confirms this. But the high ethereal was wrong. Humanity had not destroyed itself. Instead, something incredible had happened behind the quantum barrier. The pressure of isolation had not crushed the human spirit. It had compressed it, like carbon becoming diamond under incredible force. On Earth, Dr. Elena Vasquez stood before a computer screen that showed impossible things. The interface responded not to her fingers, but to her thoughts. Human scientists had cracked the code of consciousness itself and learned to link minds directly to machines. "Run the simulation again," she thought, and the computer obeyed instantly. The screen showed a model of a starship that could bend space around itself, becoming invisible to all known forms of detection. It was technology that even the Council's greatest scientists would call impossible. The breakthrough had come from studying the quantum barrier itself. Human scientists had spent decades analyzing how it worked, learning from the very prison that contained them. They discovered principles of physics that the Council had either never found or had deliberately hidden. Across the solar system, Humanity had transformed in ways the galaxy could never imagine. Mars had become a massive factory world, its red surface now covered with gleaming cities and production facilities. The asteroid belt buzzed with mining operations that could extract and process materials with perfect efficiency. But the greatest changes were in humanity itself. The exile had forced them to work together like never before. Every nation, every colony, every settlement was part of one vast network. Information flowed freely between Earth's laboratories and the research stations orbiting Saturn. A breakthrough on Jupiter's moons was immediately shared with teams working on Mars. Commander Jiang Wei walked through the construction bays of Titan, watching as the first ships of humanity's new fleet took shape. These vessels looked nothing like the crude spacecraft that had once carried humans between the stars. They were works of art and engineering that incorporated technologies the Council thought impossible. "How many are ready?" asked Admiral Sarah Chen, who had been promoted to lead humanity's space forces. 12 ships completed, 30 more in final construction, Jiang replied. Each one could take on a Council dreadnought and win. But that's not the point, is it? Sarah smiled grimly. No. The point is that they'll never see us coming. The new human ships didn't just use stealth technology. They existed in a state that was partially outside normal spacetime. They could pass through solid matter like ghosts, appear and disappear at will, and strike from directions that had no name in any language. On Europa, children born after the exile studied in schools that would have amazed their grandparents. They learned mathematics by thinking equations directly into quantum computers. They studied alien languages by accessing neural patterns stored in crystalline memory banks. Most importantly, they learned about the galaxy beyond their solar system and dreamed of seeing it for themselves. Young Marcus Torres was one of these children. He had never seen an alien, but he could describe the Korthax hive structure or the Zephyrian's crystal matrix better than most Council diplomats. He knew the location of every major world in Council space, their defenses, their weaknesses, their secrets. "When will we go out there?" he asked his teacher, Dr. Rachel Kim. "Soon," she replied. "Very soon now." The technology wasn't the only thing that had evolved. Humanity itself had changed. Decades of working together had created a unity that was deeper than the Korthak hive mind, more enduring than Zephyrian crystal bonds. Every human carried a piece of the whole, connected by quantum links that let them share thoughts and feelings across any distance. President Laura Martinez stood in the Situation Room deep beneath Earth's surface, watching displays that showed the readiness of humanity's forces. After 50 years of preparation, they were almost ready. "The Council thinks we're dead," said General Harrison, studying tactical displays. "Their patrol routes haven't changed in decades. Their defenses are designed to stop threats they understand. They have no idea what we've become." Dr. Vasquez entered the room, her face showing the excitement of a breakthrough. "The final test was successful," she announced. "We can now pierce the quantum barrier without triggering any alarms. We can send scouts into Council space and they'll never know we were there." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Humanity wouldn't announce their return with war declarations or diplomatic demands. They would simply begin appearing in Council space like nightmares made real. They would demonstrate that the exile had not destroyed them but had instead created something the galaxy had never seen before. Captain Lisa Park prepared her ship for the first mission beyond the barrier in 50 years. The vessel Silent Thunder was equipped with every advancement human science had achieved. It could travel faster than Council ships, hide better than quantum shadows, and strike with weapons that violated several laws of physics. "Remember," Admiral Chen told her before departure, "this is reconnaissance only. Let them know we exist, but don't engage unless absolutely necessary. We want them to spread word of what they've seen." As the Silent Thunder approached the quantum barrier, its crew felt the weight of history. They were about to break 50 years of silence. They were about to show the galaxy that humanity had not only survived their exile, but had been reborn by it. The ship passed through the barrier like it was made of air. Council sensors registered nothing. Automated warnings remained silent. For the first time in 50 years, a human vessel moved freely in galactic space. Within hours, the Silent Thunder had visited 3 Council worlds, scanned their defenses, and documented their technology. To the aliens living there, nothing had happened. They went about their daily lives unaware that ghosts from a forgotten past were watching them. But some humans had been watching too. Deep in the sensor arrays of distant monitoring stations, a few technicians noticed anomalies they couldn't explain. Ships that appeared for microseconds on their screens before vanishing. Energy readings that made no sense according to known physics. The silence was ending, but the galaxy didn't know it yet. Exiled humans left in silence, but their return will echo. Forever Admiral Kextar had served the Zephyrian defense fleet for 300 years. Her crystal body had grown from a small shard to a massive formation that sparkled with inner light. She had seen pirates defeated, rebellions crushed, and peace maintained across dozens of star systems. But she had never seen anything like this. "Show me the data again," she commanded, her voice creating harmonious tones that filled the bridge of her flagship. The display showed patrol routes across the outer rim of Council space. Red marks indicated where ships had gone missing. 17 vessels in the past 6 months, reported Commander Velson, his crystal formation smaller and more angular than his admirals. All different classes, from scout ships to heavy cruisers, all vanished without sending distress signals. Kextar studied the pattern, but there was no pattern. The disappearances happened in different sectors at different times, with no obvious connection between them. It was as if something was randomly plucking ships from space. "Have any been found?" she asked. "Yes, Admiral. That's the strange part. They reappear after several weeks, drifting in space with all power systems drained. The crews are alive, but changed." The first recovered ship had been the patrol vessel Crystal Song. When rescue teams boarded it, they found the crew sitting calmly at their stations, staring straight ahead with empty expressions. Medical scans showed they were physically healthy, but something was wrong with their minds. Captain Lindor of the Crystal Song could remember launching on patrol, but everything after that was blank. "I remember flying toward the Kepler Nebula," she told the investigators. "Then I remember waking up here with our ship drifting. Nothing in between." The crew's personal logs had been erased. The ship's computer banks were completely empty. Even the backup systems had been wiped clean. Most disturbing of all, the weapon systems had been drained of all energy, but there were no signs of battle damage. Across Council space, similar reports began filtering in. A Korthak research vessel found floating near the galactic core, its hive mind crew confused and disconnected from each other. An ethereal exploration ship discovered drifting in deep space, its ancient crew claiming they could sense shadows in the quantum foam. The Korthak hive was the first to truly panic. For a species that shared all thoughts and memories across billions of individuals, having crew members return with blank spots in their minds was like having pieces of their soul torn away. Queen Prime Zeketh addressed the emergency council session from her throne world. Around her, millions of Korthak drones buzzed in nervous harmony. "Something is editing our memories," she declared through her speaker drones. "Something that can make our hive mind forget. This threatens our very existence." High Ethereal Zothkol tried to maintain calm during the session, but even its ancient composure was cracking. The Ethereals had powers of the mind that other species could barely comprehend. Yet they too had crew members returning with gaps in their memory. "We have investigated every possibility," Zothkol reported to the assembled council. "Space pirates could not do this. Rogue AI would leave different traces. This is something new, something we don't understand." The breakthrough came when the merchant vessel Prosperity's Dream was discovered. Unlike the other ships, this one's crew hadn't just lost their memories. They had gained something. Rescue teams found the entire crew arranged in perfect formation on the bridge. They stood in neat rows, all facing the same direction, all holding identical metal objects in their hands. They were alive and breathing, but they didn't respond to any attempts at communication. Medical teams sedated the crew and brought them to the nearest council facility for examination. The metal objects in their hands were simple data tags, the kind used to label cargo containers. But these tags bore writing that made every council member who saw them freeze in terror. The writing was in human script. "We remember," the tag said in perfect galactic standard language. Below that, the same message was repeated in Zephyrian crystal song notation, Korthak hive harmony patterns, and ethereal mind speech symbols. "Do you?" The tags also contained data files that revealed impossible things. Complete technical specifications for council military vessels. Detailed maps of secret bases that were supposed to be heavily classified. Personal information about council leaders that should have been impossible for outsiders to obtain. Most terrifying of all, The files contained recent surveillance footage taken from inside high-security council facilities. Someone had been watching them, recording them, studying them, and they had never known. Emergency sessions were called on every council world. Ancient protocols for galactic threats were activated for the first time in millions of years. The quantum barriers around Sol system were checked and rechecked, but they showed no signs of breach. "The humans are extinct," insisted Zephyrian Science Prime Kelvash. "Our barriers have contained them for 50 years. Nothing could have survived in that system without outside support." But doubt was growing like a virus through council ranks. The Korthak hive mind began experiencing what they called phantom memories, glimpses of encounters with strange ships that no one could fully remember. Zephyrian crystals reported harmonics in space that didn't match any known physics. Ethereal seers spoke of presences that existed between the dimensions of thought. Admiral Kextar received new orders to investigate the Sol system directly. Her fleet of 12 vessels approached the quantum barrier with sensors running at maximum power. Everything appeared normal. The barrier was intact and impenetrable. No ships could be detected within. No signals escaped. But as her fleet prepared to return to normal patrol duties, something impossible happened. For exactly 3 seconds, every sensor in her fleet detected a massive energy signature right in front of them. Then it vanished as if it had never existed. "Did you record that?" Kextar asked her sensor officer. "Record what, Admiral?" came the confused reply. "I show no unusual readings." But Kextar's personal memory crystal had recorded everything. Something had been there, something huge and powerful. Something that could hide from their best sensors and then reveal itself just long enough to be detected. The message was clear. "We are here. We are watching. We can appear anywhere, anytime, and you will never see us coming." On distant worlds, council citizens began reporting strange dreams. They dreamed of ships that moved like shadows, of faces that looked almost familiar, of voices speaking languages they thought they had forgotten. The dreams always ended the same way, with the sound of something vast and patient breathing in the darkness between stars. The Ethereal Council called an emergency meeting of their most powerful minds. Together they reached out with their telepathic abilities, trying to sense what was causing the disturbances across the galaxy. What they found made them recoil in terror. There was something out there, something that felt almost familiar but had been changed by decades of isolation and determination. It was patient, intelligent, and filled with a cold purpose that made even the ancient ethereals afraid. "They survived," whispered Elder Yothamal, the oldest ethereal alive. "Not only survived but became something new, something we don't understand." The quantum barriers around Sol system had done their job perfectly. They had contained humanity completely. But they had also hidden humanity's transformation from the galaxy. Now, whatever humanity had become was returning to claim what they believed was rightfully theirs. The age of council dominance was ending, but none of them realized it yet. They thought they were dealing with mysterious raiders or unknown aliens. They had no idea that their own actions 50 years ago had created the force that would soon judge them in return. In the depths of space, invisible ships continued their silent watch, gathering information, preparing for the moment when the galaxy would learn what had happened to the humans they thought they had erased. The silence was breaking, one vanished ship at a time. Exiled humans left in silence, but their return will echo forever. The return began not with declarations of war or demands for justice, but with a simple appearance that changed everything. The Korthak home system of Zek Prime had been the heart of their hive civilization for 10 million years. It was protected by orbital defense platforms that could destroy planets, surrounded by patrol fleets that had never known defeat. Yet somehow, a ship appeared right in the center of their capital formation without triggering a single alarm. The vessel was unlike anything in the galactic databases. Its hull seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, reflecting light in patterns that hurt to look at directly. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time, clearly built by intelligence but following no design principles any council species recognized. Queen Prime Zeketh felt her hive mind shudder as the ship began broadcasting on every frequency simultaneously. The transmission bypassed all communication filters and spoke directly to every Korthak drone within 100 light-years. The voice that spoke was calm, controlled, and absolutely human. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Remembrance," the transmission said. 50 years ago, Your council declared that humanity was too dangerous for galactic civilization. You exiled us to our home system and tried to make the galaxy forget we ever existed. Queen Prime Zekth tried to respond, to demand explanations, to order the ship to surrender, but her communication systems wouldn't obey. Every time she tried to transmit, her signals simply vanished into empty space. The exile ends now, Captain Chen continued. We are coming home. But first, you need to understand what you created when you tried to silence us. The human ship began to demonstrate abilities that violated everything the Korthak knew about physics. It phased through their defensive shields as if they were made of light. It appeared in multiple locations simultaneously, creating impossible gravitational effects that bent space around entire space stations. Most disturbing of all, it began downloading information from the Korthak central databases without any physical connection. 50 years of classified military data, personal communications between hive queens, and secret research projects all flowed into the human ship's computers, as if the most advanced security systems in the galaxy were merely suggestions. We learned much during our exile. Captain Chen's voice echoed through every Korthak facility. We learned that isolation makes you stronger if you have the will to grow. We learned that silence can be the loudest sound in the universe. Most importantly, we learned exactly who among you voted to cast us out. The transmission ended, and the human ship vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. But the damage was done. Every Korthak in the system had heard the message. More importantly, they had felt something in their hive mind that they had never experienced before. Uncertainty. Within hours, similar appearances began happening across Council space. Human ships materialized in the heart of Zephyrian crystal cities, broadcasting messages that resonated through their harmonic networks. They appeared above ethereal meditation worlds, speaking thoughts directly into the ancient minds that claimed to be beyond surprise. But the humans weren't content with mere messages. They began demonstrating a justice that was as precise as it was terrifying. Admiral Kextar was commanding a patrol fleet near the border of Zephyrian space when her ship simply stopped working. Not destroyed, not damaged, they just stopped. Engines died. Weapons powered down, life support continued, but every other system went offline simultaneously. What's happening? She demanded, but her crew had no answers. Their crystal formations were dark, their harmonic abilities silent. Then the human ship appeared beside them. It was massive, easily 3 times the size of Kextar's flagship, but it moved with impossible grace. Captain Marcus Torres had been born during the exile and had spent his entire life preparing for this moment. Admiral Kextar, his voice came through systems that shouldn't have been able to transmit anything. Your service record shows that you commanded the fleet that enforced our exile. You personally destroyed 3 human colonies that tried to delay their evacuation. Kextar felt something she had never experienced in 300 years of military service. Fear. The colonies were given time to evacuate. We followed proper protocols. Proper according to whom? Torres asked. You never asked the families being forced from their homes. You never considered the children who were leaving the only worlds they had ever known. You simply followed orders. The human ship extended some kind of energy field that surrounded Kextar's entire fleet. Space itself seemed to change around them, becoming thick and dark. This is your new home, Torres announced. A pocket dimension where you can think about the choices you made. Your life support will function indefinitely. You will not age or die. You will simply exist here, alone with your memories until you understand what exile truly means. The field contracted, and Admiral Kextar's fleet vanished from normal space. To any observers, it would appear that they had simply stopped existing. In reality, they had been moved to a place between dimensions where they would experience the same isolation they had once forced on humanity. Similar fates befell council leaders across the galaxy. High-ranking ethereals who had voted for exile found themselves trapped in mental prisons of their own making. Korthak Queen Primes discovered their hive minds cut off from all external contact. Zephyrian crystal lords watched their harmonic networks go silent, but the humans were careful in their justice. Only those who had actively participated in the exile were taken. Their subordinates, their families, their civilian populations were left untouched. The message was clear. This was about accountability, not revenge. President Laura Martinez addressed the remaining free worlds from the bridge of humanity's flagship, New Horizon. The vessel was a kilometer long and equipped with technologies that made it more powerful than entire council fleets. To the peoples of the galaxy, she began, 50 years ago your leaders decided that humanity was too dangerous to exist among you. They exiled us to our home system and tried to erase us from galactic memory. Today we return not as conquerors but as teachers. The broadcast reached every inhabited world in council space. On 1,000 different planets, alien citizens watched in amazement as human ships appeared in their skies. The vessels were clearly advanced beyond anything the council possessed. Yet they made no threatening moves. We hold no anger toward those who simply followed orders or those who opposed our exile, Martinez continued. But those who made the decision to silence us must learn what silence truly means. The barriers that once contained us will now contain them, until they understand the weight of the judgment they passed. The transformation of galactic civilization began immediately. Trade routes that had excluded human space for 50 years suddenly found themselves protected by invisible human ships. Alien merchants discovered that their most dangerous routes were now completely safe, though they never saw their protectors. Colony worlds that had been oppressed by council authority found their oppressors simply vanishing overnight. Independent species that had been forced to pay tribute to larger powers discovered that their tribute collectors never arrived. The galaxy was changing, and the old order was crumbling without a single shot being fired. Young alien students on dozens of worlds began learning human languages and studying human history. They discovered that the dangerous species their leaders had feared was actually remarkably similar to their own people. Humans loved their families, built beautiful art, and explored the universe with the same curiosity that drove all intelligent life. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now elderly but still sharp, stood in the observation deck of a human research station orbiting the galactic core. Around her, alien scientists worked alongside humans, sharing knowledge that had been kept separate for 50 years. They thought they were protecting the galaxy from us, she told her assistant, a young Zephyrian crystal named Velnara. Instead, they protected us from the galaxy's limitations. We had 50 years to grow beyond anything they could imagine. Velnara's crystal form chimed thoughtfully. Do you think they will learn? The ones you have exiled? Some will, Elena replied. The wise ones will remember that exile teaches patience, determination, and the value of freedom. The foolish ones will only learn to fear, but either lesson is better than the ignorance they lived with before. The echo of humanity's return was spreading through the galaxy like ripples in a pond. Every world touched by human justice was changed. Every species that witnessed the precise, careful way humans dismantled the old power structures began to hope for something better. The age of council dominance was ending, but something new was beginning. A galaxy where power came from wisdom rather than force, where exile was reserved only for those who would deny others their voice. The silence was broken, and the sound would echo forever. Exiled humans left in silence, but their return will echo forever. The last stronghold of the old council was not what anyone expected. While the Korthak had fallen to their own hive mind turning against them, and the Zephyrians had watched their crystal networks go dark, the Ethereals had managed something different. They had done what no other council species could do. They had admitted they were wrong. High ethereal Zothkol floated in the meditation chamber of their home world, surrounded by the most ancient minds in the galaxy. These beings had existed for millions of years, had watched entire civilizations rise and fall, had guided galactic development since before most species had discovered fire. Now they faced something they had never encountered, judgment from a species they had tried to erase. The humans approach, whispered Elder Yothmal, her telepathic voice trembling with age and fear. Their ships number in the thousands. Their technology surpasses anything we have seen. They could destroy us without effort. Through their shared consciousness, the Ethereals could sense the human fleet surrounding their star system. The ships moved with purpose and patience, taking positions that would allow them to cut off all escape routes. But strangely, they made no demands, issued no ultimatums. They simply waited. Admiral Elena Vasquez, now one of the most senior humans alive, stood on the bridge of the flagship New Horizon. Her hair was white with age, her face marked by decades of responsibility, but her eyes still held the fire that had driven humanity through their exile. "Open a channel," she commanded. "Let's see if they're ready to listen." The transmission reached every ethereal mind simultaneously. "I am Admiral Elena Vasquez of the Human Federation. 50 years ago you participated in our exile. Today we have come to complete the circle of justice." Sothkol gathered its courage and responded. "We acknowledge our actions. We admit that we were wrong to exile your species. We acted from fear and arrogance, not wisdom. If you have come for revenge, we will not resist." There was a long pause before Vasquez replied. When she did, her voice carried something the ethereals had not expected. Sadness. "Revenge would be easy," she said. "We could imprison you as we did the others. We could make you vanish from the galaxy as you tried to make us vanish. But that would make us exactly what you feared we were 50 years ago." The human fleet began to move, but not in an attack formation. Instead, they spread out around the ethereal system in a protective pattern. It was the stance of guardians, not conquerors. "You are the last," Vasquez continued. "The Korthak queens are learning about isolation in dimensions where their hive minds cannot reach. The Zephyrian admirals are discovering what silence truly means in spaces where their crystal songs create no harmony. They will remain there until they understand what they did to us." On the surface of the ethereal homeworld, millions of ancient beings listened to words that would reshape their understanding of justice. "But you are different." The admiral's voice reached into their deepest thoughts. "You can learn without experiencing our punishment, because you can truly understand the minds of others. You can feel what we felt. You can know what exile means without living it yourself." Elder Yothmal projected a thought that reached every ethereal in the system. "We accept responsibility. We will make amends. Tell us how we can repair the damage we have done." The answer came not from Admiral Vasquez, but from President Marcus Torres, who had been born during the exile and now led humanity's government. His ship appeared beside the flagship, and his voice carried the authority of someone who had never known a galaxy where humans were accepted. "You will help us build something new," he said. "Not a council that rules through fear, but a federation that leads through wisdom. Every species will have a voice. Every world will have representation. And if any group tries to silence another, they will face the same judgment you face today." The transformation began immediately. Across the galaxy, the old council structure simply ceased to exist. The massive bureaucracies that had controlled trade for millions of years were replaced by smaller, more responsive organizations. Species that had been client states for millennia suddenly found themselves with equal voices in galactic affairs. The barriers around the exiled council leaders remained in place, but they were not permanent prisons. One by one, over years and decades, those barriers began to fall as the imprisoned species demonstrated real change. The first to be released were lower-ranking officials who had simply followed orders. They emerged into a galaxy that was fundamentally different from the one they remembered. Captain Sarah Chen, now an old woman but still sharp, commanded the first human diplomatic mission to the restored Zephyrian worlds. The crystal beings who greeted her were different from their predecessors. Their songs were more complex. Their harmonies included notes of humility that had never existed before. "We remember what we did," sang Crystal Prime Kelnash, who had been chosen to lead her people after their old leader's exile. "We will not forget the lesson your return taught us." The galaxy learned to function differently. Instead of massive fleets enforcing council law, disputes were settled by mixed tribunals that included representatives from multiple species. Trade was regulated not by ancient bureaucrats, but by modern agreements that could be changed when they no longer served their purpose. Most importantly, the galaxy developed what became known as the Echo Principle. Any species or organization that tried to silence another would find themselves facing the same silence they had imposed. Human ships, still invisible and operating throughout galactic space, served as the enforcement mechanism for this new law. Dr. Rachel Kim, now the head of the Human Research Council, worked with alien scientists to establish new colonies on worlds that had been empty for millions of years. But these colonies were different from the old council settlements. They were joint ventures, with humans, Zephyrians, reformed Korthak, and dozens of other species working together. "Look at what we've built," she told her assistant, a young human named David Chen, who was Sarah's grandson. They stood on the observation deck of New Harmony Station, watching ships from 100 different worlds dock at the massive facility. "My grandmother used to tell me about the old galaxy," David said. species kept apart by fear and regulation. It sounds like a terrible place to live. It was, Rachel agreed, but it taught us something important. When you try to silence someone, you only make their voice more powerful when it finally returns. On distant worlds, children grew up learning about the Great Exile as a turning point in galactic history. They studied how fear and arrogance had nearly destroyed the galaxy's greatest hope for unity. They learned about the 50 years of silence that had transformed humanity from a young, aggressive species into the wise guardians who now protected galactic freedom. The Ethereals, true to their word, became humanity's greatest allies in building the new order. Their ancient wisdom, combined with humanity's innovative energy, created solutions to problems that had plagued the galaxy for millions of years. High Ethereal Zothkol, now genuinely humbled by the experience, worked directly with human leaders to establish the new galactic constitution. "You could have destroyed us all," it said to President Torres during one of their meetings. "Instead, you saved us from ourselves." "Destruction would have been pointless," Torres replied. "We didn't return to the galaxy for revenge. We returned to make sure what happened to us never happens to anyone else." Years passed, then decades, then centuries. The galaxy prospered under its new Federation structure. Species that had been enemies for millions of years learned to work together. Technologies that had been hoarded by the old council were shared freely among all member worlds. But humanity never forgot the lesson of their exile. Human ships continued to patrol the dark spaces between stars, invisible guardians ensuring that no species could ever again impose silence on another. They called themselves the Echo Fleet, and their motto was simple: never again. Admiral David Chen, great-grandson of the original Sarah Chen, stood on the bridge of the newest human flagship as it patrolled the galactic rim. Around him, his crew included humans, Zephyrians, reformed Korthak Ethereals, and dozens of other species working together. "Signal from Sector 7, reported his communications officer, a young ethereal named Yoth Tal. "A mining consortium is trying to force independent colonies to accept unfair contracts. Set course for Sector 7, David ordered. Time to remind them that some echoes never fade. The ship vanished from normal space, moving faster than light toward its destination. When it arrived, the mining consortium would find their communications jammed, their ships disabled, and their unfair contracts mysteriously deleted from their computers. They would be left with a simple choice: negotiate fairly or face the same silence they had tried to impose on others. The exile that had begun 50 years earlier had taught the galaxy a lesson that would echo forever. In the vast darkness between stars, human ships continued their eternal watch, ensuring that the voice of freedom would never again be silenced. The galaxy remembered. It had no choice, and in that memory lay the promise that no species would ever again face the loneliness of exile, simply for being different.